Welcome back, LTS. Let's talk sports. And before the break, I mentioned we have a gentleman here who knows everything concerning, dare I say, sport in Trinidad and Tobago. He's the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, and he's also he's faithful enough to hold on to big portfolios, and he's also the president of Trinidad and Tobago Commonwealth Games Association, Mr. Brian Lewis. Welcome to the set.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Definitely, and you're holding on two big
well, it only sounds so. Really, what it is that the Olympic Committee, the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee, also functions as the Trinidad and Tobago Commonwealth Games Association.
Right, so it falls.
In between both from the perspective of the Olympic Committee and the Commonwealth Games, they are responsible for the Olympic Games, the Pan Am Games, Central American and Caribbean Games, the Commonwealth Games, Youth Commonwealth Games, and the Youth Olympic Games.
Nice. Now, before we get into Commonwealth, we were talking a bit in terms of your past involvement in sport. Now, I know you were a member of the Harvard's Club. So give us a bit of your history. You're still a member,
Club,
right?
Yeah.
Give us a bit of your sporting history.
Well, typical wannabe. I mean, I've been involved in sport growing up in Belmont, so, sports was a critical part of the environment and growing up. It was either sport, it was a combination of sports, calypso and carnival, as you know.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, Belmont was a hotbed, so to speak, of social activism, as we call it, whether it would be Che Guevara, Black Power,
right, because you have the
Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and sports played a critical part of it. So I've always been involved in sports, surrounded by sports. As a matter of fact, growing up single parent, I've always said that if it wasn't for sport and the influence of sport and the positive values of sport, I may have succumbed to the usual temptations that a lot of young men, in particular, growing up single parent, succumb to. So sport has played a key role in that perspective, and I've dabbled in everything. I mean, at one point in my early years, I ran with Hampton track and field.
Nice, yeah.
I was encouraged by a gentleman called Albert King, who saw me run in primary school. But unfortunately, at that point in time, I didn't have the discipline. So, and then working was more important at that point.
Right.
As soon as you were able to, because again, being the eldest of four, I said, it couldn't,
Right.
You just had to get into the real world. So, but I've always maintained an interest in sport. Finished 6 marathon, got beaten by Granny Luces 3 times. So no real illusions of grandeur there. And I kind of settled into the sport of rugby, which I thoroughly enjoyed playing. Got into sports administration while still an active competitive athlete. And
then from there, how did you get involved with the Olympic Committee?
Well, I mean, I went to a meeting to represent the sport of rugby, and I guess, made a contribution that somebody seemed to have felt that made sense. And then I was asked by Douglas Camacho to consider running for election as an executive member, and I accepted the challenge, and I've been there since 17, that was 17 years ago, and kept moving up. Spent 8 years as the Secretary General, and then last year, May, I took up the challenge to contest for the election as President of the Olympic Committee, and here I am.
I know, we see the results today, and you're the President now, Mr. President.
Well, that's what they say. Yeah.
That's what they say.
Some people call it President, I call it Chief Servant.
Chief Servant.
Yeah, because it's about serving the athletes
definitely.
And trying to
it's not just about you. Yeah.
Contribute to making sport a great activity and endeavor for young people in particular to participate. Sport can make a positive difference, and it is up to the sport administrators and the sport leaders to operate with integrity, to ensure that the role that sport, the positive role that sport can play, it is able to play.
Yeah. I just want to let me just get into it early. Commonwealth.
Yeah.
What was your but I can give you the take, which I think you know of most of the public. Let me not speak on behalf of everyone, but what was your take on the 8 the 8 medals that we got. And our general
winning a
performance.
medal winning medals at the level of world championships and Commonwealth Games and Olympic Games is not easy.
Right.
So that while we would have had expectations going in of, to be honest, the expectation or the target that we had in mind was 9 or more. 9, the magic figure of 9 is the most amount of medals we have won at a Commonwealth Games. That would have occurred in 1966, way back then. And we won 9 medals, 5 gold, 2 silver, 2 bronze. The last time that we won a Commonwealth gold medal was in 1998 with the legendary Atuk Boulder.
Yes, I remember
that was in
that.
Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So I think in Delhi we got 6 medals. So we had a target.
Right.
We didn't meet it. We got 8. No bronze, no gold. Sorry, 3 silver,
and
5 bronze.
Yeah.
For me, I said it's encouraging. Encouraging from the perspective of sport is not an exact science, and you know, a lot of people feel that winning is a given. The reality is that you have other countries, other athletes, all have the same target and focus. And at the end of the day, you know, the margins are very thin between winning and losing, or
And of course you have many
the
factors
glory
in there.
of victory or the agony of defeat. But one has to keep a focus on the big picture. It's a process. It's a pathway. So the real big target is Rio 2016.
Yeah, definitely.
So in the context of Rio 2016, encouraging.
But
I would have been real concerned,
if
not necessarily panicking, but real concerned if you had 0 medals.
all right, then
With 2 years,
obviously-
because as you know, incidentally, today they're celebrating
Exactly.
the 2 years away from the Rio.
Yes.
And on Friday, the 5th of August, 2016, the opening
yes.
ceremony will take place. So 2 years out is a very important point, and critical point, and encouraging.
Now, as you know, and as I kind of mentioned earlier on, a lot of people, Trinis in particular, you know, they said just 8 medals, and of course, us not getting a gold, it seemed to be a factor. And I've realized that a lot of people look down actually at Commonwealth in terms of, well, if we can't get a gold there, we nowhere. What would you say to people like that?
I don't say anything. They're entitled to their opinion. You know, it's important to not get distracted when you're involved in sport, especially at the high performance level. You know, you have to appreciate everybody have their role to play. The public, their opinions, the talk, all of that adds to sport.
Right.
You know, it adds to the profile about sports, it adds to the vibes, and you can't get, I've always tried to advise people, administrators, athletes, coaches, don't get drawn into the old talk and everything. Understand that is the reality of it. Most people don't really understand and appreciate the effort, the training, the hard work, the fact that there's a process.
Exactly, together,
They compare Trinidad and Tobago to Jamaica, USA, England. You know, in some of those countries, they're spending millions of dollars. In a country like Jamaica, Jamaica focuses, when it comes to Olympic sport and Commonwealth sports, they don't mince matters.
Right.
Track and field is where they're good at. Track and field is their focus. That is where they pay all their attention. They have a pathway in terms of track and field that goes back 100 years. You know, Jamaica. And then the other thing is that Jamaica for Jamaica. They're very passionate and patriotic. Even in some instances, I would say more so than us. Let me put it this way. You will quicker see a Trinbagonian wearing a Jamaica jersey than you will see a Jamaican wearing a TTO jersey.
We're very sometime-ish people. If it's football, we're seasonal with our emotions. We support you now, but if you lose,
I tell people, but Trini is Trini, you know. You know, I love Trinidadians,
Yeah.
Trinbagonians. I love my country.
Of course.
And I take it, you know what I mean? Listen, if you take on a Trini, he could send you, he or she could send you crazy, you know.
Definitely.
So you just have to take it. Today they for you,
Next
tomorrow.
day, yeah.
And then
That can change on you.
if you buy into the fact that they're against you today, tomorrow they will be for you.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get confused. You just have to take it as it comes. But the important thing is to focus on the process.
Definitely. Now, in terms of process, I read in your article in The Guardian that you mentioned athletes not getting funding based on the cabinet-approved Elite Athletes Assistance Program. Firstly, is that fund even enough to cover the so-called elite athletes?
Well, that's a different discussion. I think the important thing is that it ought not to be swept under the carpet.
Right.
I think that we have a responsibility to all our athletes who have earned or deserved to receive elite assistance funding under the cabinet established policy guidelines that they should receive. The fact is that while there are a number of athletes receiving their funding, there are athletes who are not receiving their funding, and that the expectation is that they must still be able to perform.
Right.
And that we either criticize them or praise them on the basis of their performance, but we, on the same hand, don't do our part. And I say our from the context of it is the responsibility, duty, and obligation of all the sport administrators and sport leaders to ensure that the athletes are provided what they need to deliver on the performances that we expect of them. And I think that is an aspect that needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. There are athletes who have been placed in a significant negative situation. I know of an athlete, for example, who have had to give up their apartment, another one who have had to sell their car, all to fund, their campaign. And the fact is that if they're entitled to receive elite assistance funding under in accord with the cabinet guidelines, then they should receive their funding.
Yeah, no matter what. And of course, you said, I know you mentioned even some sold vehicles, and it's also the love of the sport and the country, because at the end of the day, when they go, they represent Trinidad and Tobago. But have you guys asked for assistance? I know you would, but I still have to ask the question. Have you asked for assistance for those athletes who are not considered elite, or is it the duty?
Well, first thing, let's just look at the elite assistance.
Right.
That's a very important aspect, because it deals with high performance.
Right.
High performance deals with the Olympics, World Championships, etc. That level. It is untenable.
Right.
To be in the high performance environment if you don't receive appropriate funding. It is almost, the mountain to climb is near,
so much,
is just too much. So that's at the high performance level. So when you talk about development now and talent ID, that's a different aspect of what they call a long-term athlete development pathway.
All right, so we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, we continue and we talk some more with the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. Remember, he's also the president of the Commonwealth Games Association, LTS. Let's take a short break.